Behind the scenes action, that is always the weirdest part of this episode, is starting it. We're all waiting in silence and no one can see what I can see. So like my co-host Chris and of course our guest Jason the Livonator are just sitting here like waiting for me to like give this cue. And I think we're live, guys. Chris, can you hear me?
I can hear
Jason,
you.
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Woo, I think we're here, guys. In chat, please let me know if something sounds amiss. But otherwise, Chris, take her away.
Hey guys, how's it going? I don't even know what episode this is.
77, baby. 77.
There we go, 77. Gotta believe him. I gotta believe him. Guys, welcome to the show. Don't forget to hit the like button. I'm just gonna get that right off the hop. Thank you to our Patreons. We love you guys. Again, gonna get that out of the way because we always forget to do that. Of course, you notice we've got a third guy sitting in the room. You guys probably know him if you watch the show. It is Jason the Livonator from the VR chat channel. And yeah, welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Now, there's a specific reason why Jason's on tonight. We'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, before we jump into the topic at hand, we always like to kick things off here. What have you guys been playing? I guess we'll start with Jason. I don't care what you say, Jay.
I agree.
Mostly the last couple weeks, I would say more on the VR2 side. A lot of Gran Turismo.
Is there a PS in front of that VR2?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm talking a little lingo there, right?
Yep.
Little shorthand lingo. But yeah, I've been doing more GT7. I've kind of been into that Townsman game. Just kind of find it very relaxing. So
I need to play Townsman. I keep forgetting to play Townsman.
that's been my go-to there. But
I've heard good things.
Yeah, other than that, just my usuals, cruising around, VR chat, different places. I'm always around.
Yeah, the social
when I can.
The three of us. Brian, what have you been playing?
Well, obviously, I dropped a review for Vertigo 2 for the PC side of things. So PC
Yeah,
VR.
so if you guys haven't checked that out, go watch it.
Yeah, man. Vertigo is something special, and I actually went back and watched my original review, and I gave it a 7.5 for the first Vertigo game. And I kind of think I maybe under. It was a smaller game in scale, but I think what it does for VR. I want to almost go back and revisit the first game just because it does hold a place in my heart. Second game, however, is bigger and better in every single way. People talk about like Half-Life. We need Half-Life. The next Half-Life game in VR. Man, Vertigo is that, and in some cases more. It's just so wacky and so crazy, but so polished and refined, and there's just a real sense of charm to it that few games have, and the scale is massive. It's kind of everything you want in like a first-person shooter. It's crazy. Lots of weapons, lots of comedy, lots of action, and it's done so damn well. The developer Zach something. I can't. His last name is a big one. He deserves all the credit in the world for being a single dev developing this thing because it's a 12-hour campaign and it doesn't stop delivering from beginning to end. Massive, huge bosses. I mean, as a fan of the use of scale in VR and seeing things like look big in VR, I guess like the bosses in Horizon. I mean, some of the bosses in Vertigo put the Horizon bosses to shame. Giant, huge, amorphous blobs and lava monsters. It's man, if you have a PC VR headset or can play these things, Vertigo 2 is a must buy. Like, must buy. Don't wait for a sale. Just go and buy it now.
And we need to support games like this. It's really important.
Yeah.
These premium games, and it's made by like one dude, like you said, Zach Siakalis Brown.
Yeah. Zach Brown. That's way easier.
Zach D. Brown. Yeah, no, I mean, I really do feel that this game is worth supporting.
Yeah,
it's awesome. It kind of reminds me of like if Squanch Games toned down their humor a little bit.
I said it's Trover Saves the Universe, but like less bit, less Justin Roiland, really, is what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say like less Justin Roiland, which isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world.
Thank God.
Yeah, I mean, Justin's weird. I mean, I don't like his sense of humor, and I literally think I listen to anything he's ever done. I feel like he just like rambles until he hits comic gold, and when he does hit it, he makes me laugh my ass off because I have an inappropriate sense of humor. But it's the rambling. It's just the like, yeah, so like I'm saying we should go down there, don't you think? Don't you think we should go down there? I think we should. Oh, yeah, okay, let's do that then. I'm like, oh my god, like, I mean, fuck me. Anyway, regardless, I think it's an amazing game. I feel like back to your comment actually about the first Vertigo. Someone else was asking me about it in comments, and we were talking about it, and I said I think the first Vertigo, which has been remastered now, so that's the only version you can get on PC.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't play it until the remastered version either, so it didn't hit me till much later because it came out in like originally in like 2017, I think. And
I think it's
when
even
it
2016 actually.
so yeah, it's like, and I remember thinking to myself, and reading people's comments about the game when it first launched, like there was nothing like that. Just about like there was no Half-Life Alyx. There was not really any meaty single player campaigns. We lived in a world of super hot job simulator, wave shooters, a couple of premium PC games, probably Valkyrie, stuff like that. But to have like a meaty single player campaign, there was nothing like it. And so, yeah, it's been a long time, and the sequel's out now, and it's more of everything. Now, when you go back and play the first Vertigo in the remastered version, it's still cool, but I don't think it has the impact that it probably made when it first came out, just because we're in a different VR environment. I mean, we live in a. It's still impressive, and unfortunately, we still don't see a lot of games like that.
No,
But
some of the boss battles in
it
the
is.
first game too are pretty crazy. That big blob you fight in
They
that
are.
first game, like there's some cool uses of VR even in the first game. It's much smaller scale.
It
I
is,
still
but
recommend
it's
people go play it.
totally, absolutely. I'm just saying, it's like it is a simpler game. Whereas I feel like Vertigo 2 really does feel like, in some ways, I think you said this in your review, sometimes it feels more like Half-Life 3 than Half-Life Alyx did. It's more ambitious than Half-Life Alyx, which is amazing considering like one dude made it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's
I
nuts.
mean, it's mind blowing, and I knew we would see the comments, and as soon as your review went up, the comments start coming of, man, I hope we see this on PSVR 2. Hope we see this on PSVR 2. And I'm like, yeah, I really hope we see it on PSVR 2. But it's one dude, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to like what the sales are and what he sees, sales of his game on PC and sales of PSVR 2, which we're going to get into because that seems to be a topical thing today if anyone's been paying attention to the socials. But I want to talk about me. What
Surprise,
I've been playing.
surprise.
I have been playing GT7 because I can't stop playing it. I've been playing Resident Evil Village again. I can't stop playing it. I'm on my second playthrough. I'm playing it on the Village of Shadows mode, which is the most difficult level, and they actually change some of the placements and like zombies, well, I guess zombies too, but like enemies, werewolves are just replaced by like harder guys. So like where you might just have seen like a normal werewolf, all of a sudden like an end level werewolf that's like armored up shows up, and guys who took like a shot to the face with a shotgun now take like 3 shots. So it really ups the ante. But for those of you who, like me, who powered through it on hard or whatever and are really wanting to like be pushed and have to really conserve and think about crafting and stuff, yeah, I don't want it to end. I don't want it to end. So I've been playing a lot of that. I played Galaxy Kart. I saw that Parole put a review up for that. Holy crap, I feel bad for Brian having to spend that much time in that game. It's like 4 tracks, 4 characters, something like that. It's slow, and man, it's just not a great time. I was telling Ryan and Jason my problem with it is the only control. I mean, it's funny enough, it's got a setup for a wheel. I haven't tried that. It has a setup for a joystick in the controls. I haven't tried that, so I'm going to assume that's like a HOTAS. And then the only other option, though, for like normal people is just for the motion controls, you got to grab the steering wheel, which first of all worked like crap in Dash Dash. So it's done a little bit better here, I guess, as far as kind of like just like the smoothness of turning and everything. But you still have this problem of like you need to have both hands on the wheel. You don't need to, but you have to have like the hand on the wheel and the accelerator on your right hand, but then all your weapons are on your right side. So you have to take your hand off the steering wheel, which lets go the accelerator, which brings you to a stop basically to pick up a weapon. So I ended up doing this reach over my side to try to like grab and throw, and I'm like, this is stupid. And maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. It's not a great time. Tried Gorn. Gorn is Gorn. Like, I don't really. It's slightly cleaner in the headset. There might be some extra content, but I don't want to play it again to find out. I told you, like, the first thing I started, and okay, like, spoiler alert, our topic today is accessibility. It's in the comments or in the title there, and so we'll get into that. But speaking of accessibility, Gorn starts you off. You can't get to the option. I hate games that don't let you access the options right off the hop. They force you through their settings. So the game starts. I'm on the floor because I'm sitting. So you have to stand, and you can't walk or anything yet. So you actually have to physically kind of walk yourself over to where the pedestal is, where you basically go, yes, I'm here. Then they tell you how to do the like gorilla walk, which I absolutely hate in video games. And you have to gorilla walk your ass over to the first arena, put up with their bullshit and their controls until you can then change your settings around to like something a little bit more sensible. Anyways, boo.
Boo.
Not a fan of that. What else am I playing? I tried. It was on sale. I picked it up for $10, Canadian, so like $2.99 American, and I picked up Ride 4, the motorcycle game, which is pretty much like GT7 in a motorcycle racer. And if you guys had ever saw the footage that was kicking around YouTube, people are like, well, this is the most photoreal video game ever. And it is pretty damn photoreal. Like when you go into some of the road tracks and you put on rain, and it looks amazing. And I threw it onto the cinematic screen in VR so I could not see the peripherals, and I was in the first person mode. Woo! Holy crap, that game needs to be in VR. Damn.
But then it wouldn't look as good.
Distract Gorn is out. It's a free upgrade. We thought it was going to be a paid game, but they like no free upgrade path. It seems like they finally listened to people and changed. And no, Distract, it did not make me feel gorny. It did not fit.
Oh.
It did not make me feel not a fan. I mean, I like Gorn's Gorn. It's great. It's fun. And I mean, let's backtrack here. I'm glad it's on PSVR 2. I'm a huge supporter of us getting all these PSVR 1 games over properly, and that's awesome. But this game really feels like just, I'm sure there's some extra content. I think they said there was, but it just feels like the same game brought over. I didn't even play it long enough to tell you if there's haptics in it. I'm sorry, bad reviewer, but I didn't want to play it that much. So, meh. Oh, Distract. If you're talking about Ride 4, it's really freaking hard. But anyways, I digress. I really do want. I would love that game. Would kill on PSVR. There's no motorcycle games on VR. Period.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Except for that Moto Racer 4.
Yeah, Moto Racer.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
And that was so bad.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. I mean, if you really want to split hairs, over on PC there was what the heck is it called now? It's almost like a Jet Moto type of thing. V Racer hover bike.
Oh yeah.
Which is actually awesome if you like kind of the wipeout thing. But anyway, anything else I've been playing? Anything else?
I mean, we played some Pavlov today. That was kind of going to be our segue, wasn't it?
We are, so I don't want to talk about that yet.
Oh, okay,
we played a little bit.
Creed.
Ryan and I played some Creed today. We can't really talk about it.
I mean, if you like the first Creed game, it's the same game. Plus stuff. I mean, I don't know. You can't say too much, but I mean, I'm not lying about it. It's not like it's Creed 2. It's Creed Rise of whatever, Creed Rise to Glory. You know, the super deluxe edition, or whatever the heck they call it. So, yeah, that's coming next week. So we'll talk more about that then.
Ryan will have a full review out on the site. So check that out. Should be out on launch day or on the embargo drop day, which is what, Monday?
Yeah, unless they change it again.
If Ryan has to get his shit together.
Shut up, Chris.
So yeah, okay. Distract. You've let the cat out of the bag. Did you hear PSVR 2 is a failure?
Yeah, I heard. I'm selling mine right now just so I can get my money back here.
Hey, mine's on eBay right now. Jay, what do you think about that?
Talk about misinformation.
Fake news.
Well, number one, how do you do sales projections without at least a quarter in there to speak of? And even if they are covering this in a quarter, it's been out a month. It takes 3 months for a quarter. So how do you project sales? And we talk about, like you said, the soft launch, right? Only online in the US, no retailers yet. It's a tough one to get for a lot of people. Not everybody has the money for it either, because it's right after Christmas. They knew this was going to happen. This is why they didn't promote it more. It would have cost
I
them a
know.
lot more money. They're better off promoting it in the upcoming months or even closer to Christmas and stuff for next year. That's when I think we'll see the most sales coming through. But to call something a failure after being out for a month is a little ridiculous to me.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Especially when they announced 100 titles for us, right? And how many have we seen so far? Maybe 55 out of 100.
Something like that. If you're
So
even that much,
yeah, we still have a long way to go. We don't know if there's any more AAA titles coming. We don't know anything else there besides that we've been enjoying this for a month.
And just
there's going to be
sorry.
there's going to be the hater. There's going to be the haters. There's been the discrepancy since it came out, right?
Well, there's specifically this hater. I mean, this is from Bloomberg yet again. This is from Takashi Mochizuki, who has been debunked multiple times, who doesn't source his information, who debunks his own sourced information, and now we have this. I like to take this guy seriously. To take honestly anything Bloomberg has published in regards to VR seriously, it's hard at this point, especially when it's from this author who even this thing doesn't really source his info. He mentions one group that kind of estimates what their guesses may be for sales, and then just proceeds to say like they need to reduce their price. They need to do this. It's been a month. And I'm not even saying they're wrong yet, but it's just like, but they can't, but they don't have the facts enough to be right yet either. Like it's so early to even start spouting out this kind of misinformation just to get a jump on it. Like if this guy thinks, well, I don't think PSVR is doing that good because like my regular gaming channels aren't covering it, so I'm going to try to get a jump on this bad news, which I think is what it is. Honestly, this guy seems to be ahead of bad news before it even exists. Whether that bad news happens or not, he doesn't care. He'll just say, "Well, my sources were, I guess, misinformed because I can't tell you who they are." So
it's shit news, and he's done it before.
Yeah,
convenient timing too, right? Right after something becomes popular, somebody comes out and says it's a failure right off the bat.
Well,
I wonder if that might have been sponsored by anybody out there.
I mean that is a take on it. It's just like when I see a news article coming out after a piece of tech has been out for a month, and he's saying it's a failure. And he's like, and this guy I talked to who's an analyst, that's all they say is that he's Geronimo. What the heck is it now here? I can't even remember. I had it here. Basically saying that he's like, I suspect a price cut will be needed to avoid a complete disaster of their new product. When I hear stuff like that, even if that like he's quoting someone who's saying that just seems to be like to me like just catastrophizing something, and there's just I don't think anyone worth listening to is going to be willing to make any comment yet about the future of a headset. Now, do I believe that it might be selling less than Sony projected? Yeah, I said that before when someone was like, "Oh, they cut the projections from 4 million to 2 million." Like as far as how many headsets they were producing, I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, we live and then one thing the article says, and I agree with, is we live in some like crappy economic times for a lot of people. Yeah. A lot of people are struggling, and I agree with the fact that a not inexpensive headset is not a priority for a lot of people. I also agree with that. So is it going to be a struggle? Yeah, probably a little more than they expected, and they're going to have to really think about that, and maybe a price reduction, though I don't see them doing that anytime.
Got to happen right now, or they're done. Sony is done, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've said, look, the headset is not expensive in the VR scene. Not when you look at it from that point of view. For a console market, maybe. And I don't know what Sony's going to have to do with that. But I don't think that like Sony and their analysts and whatever their projections are just going to immediately do an about turn and cut costs and bundle games, and like we're not there yet. And this is what I said said this on Twitter and on Facebook. I was like, okay, calm down, because anybody like take a look at everything that surrounded this launch. They launched in February. Who launches a headset in February unless they're trying to do a bit of a soft launch? Jason said it perfectly. It's not even in stores. in most markets. Like in the US, you still have got to order it through Sony. You know, that is not a company that is trying to like completely like knock down doors and sales numbers. You don't do that when you're, you know, like it's definitely a soft launch that they seem for some reason want to be able to control the like the flow of orders and not just, I think they just
Money.
don't want another PS5 situation on top of a PS5 situation where they're just getting PS5s now into stores. The last thing they want to do is have another piece of tech related to it that they can't get into stores. I've also seen, you know, I was also reading another report that was saying just the market. Oh, that's what it was. It was E3. E3 got canceled today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Ubisoft pulled out, and that was the death blow to it because neither Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo were committing to it either, and so that was the death blow. But like the analysts that were talking about it were saying, you know, we are still coming out of an economic shit show and a shit show for a lot of companies development cycle wise with the pandemic. And they said that like game development is all over the place. A lot of developers are behind schedule. They're all playing catch up. There's gaps in where their releases were supposed to be, and just they said like that's also not helping E3 because a lot of companies just aren't ready to be at a big show.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I think that directly relates to VR is that, and we've talked about this, Ryan, you and I, and Jason and I have talked about this behind the scenes. I think we're probably seeing. I mean, we'd be stupid to not assume that this situation, both economics and the pandemic, hasn't caused a ton of issues around the launch of this PSVR 2, around developers having games ready. There were probably games that have just been completely screwed development cycle wise because all of a sudden they had to learn how to, you know, they were working remotely, or they've just seen economic hits for some smaller developers.
Inflation.
Yeah, we just don't know. What we do know is that Sony has said that there are a lot of first-party studios making games. You know, we have talked about the fact that it sucks that we don't know anything. There's nothing to be really excited about besides, like, say, RE4 and VR. I don't think that's Sony just being quiet. I think it's Sony just not being ready to talk yet. And I think that we are in a weird situation where I think the PSVR 2, they kind of had to get it out. They just had to get it out. It had already been kind of delayed. And they had enough games to get it out the door. But I still think that like this isn't the launch they necessarily would have preferred. They just looked at it as like, we got enough. We've got a lot of Quest type ports. We've got a couple of key anchor titles. Let's give her. But it doesn't feel like the big push. They haven't even marketed it right. And I'm not apologizing for it and fanboying for it. I'm just looking at it from I feel like a logical standpoint. At least I think I am. You guys can tell me in chat if I'm full of shit, but
well, they're also focusing more on the shows that cater more to VR, right? There's been a bigger presence if you look at CES, you look at PAX, and all these different places. Compared to the prior years, there's a bigger presence. Sony was promoting there, right? They had Horizon to check out. They had all the stuff out there, so they're putting money behind it. And if there's no money in it, and they're running out of money putting this stuff, why are they buying up all these gaming companies right now? Why are these guys fighting to get big companies? There is money there. They don't want to make the same mistake Meta made with throwing too much at something and then having to lay off 10,000 employees. You know what I mean?
And slap the
it's being
prices on their
financially smart.
headsets.
Yeah, exactly. They're being financially smart to the point where they can keep it at a cost effective for what's in there. I mean, it's tough to compare this thing but I would compare this thing more to like the Quest Pro than I would to like the Quest 2, like everybody was doing too with this stuff. Quest 2 was a cheap price. It was meant to do what it was meant to do, to keep people buying in there. But to get the AAA and everything everybody wants, these big companies aren't going to take a gamble on a mediocre-based graphical headset. And I'm not knocking the Quest 2. I love it. You know what I mean? I love the Pro. I love the PSVR 2. I love all VR. But you can't say something's a failure in less than a month too with this whole crap here. The E3 thing I get, right? That's a lot of money. That's like the big thing with everybody out there with the conference. Big deal. We're losing one. For me, unfortunately, that's the closest one to me, and probably the only one I would have been able to go to after all this time, and now I can't. That's a bummer for me, but it's not. I wouldn't look at it as a bad thing on the industry. They're saving money right now, so they don't have to keep upcharging us for stuff because of inflation and everything else that's going on right now. They're trying to keep a base. They're trying to keep the prices the same, so everybody will keep doing the same thing. Imagine if PlayStation games went up $10 right now for the PS5 stuff, right? For your main games. So you're already paying 70 right now here. Imagine if it went up to 80.
We're at 90 here in Canada.
Yeah, well,
Riots.
you guys are different. You guys are different, but that would really affect gaming in that aspect. These guys are playing financially smart right now, in my opinion, which is why these things are happening. Sony didn't produce as much as they wanted to originally for this stuff. What's the point of having a bunch of things out there if they're not going to sell right away? That's just more money out of their pocket for the moment for something to sit there. Once this thing hits the stores and people are able to go and pick them up, we know damn well that most people are waiting. A lot of some of my friends are waiting for that, right? They haven't got it yet. They just want to be able to go to Best Buy or somewhere else and pick it up. And I get that.
Yep.
It makes a lot more sense because then if something goes wrong with your headset, you bring it right back to the store, you get another one, and you walk out with it, right?
Yeah.
Instead of having to pay to ship it back to Sony and then getting it back.
Which is what
because we all love Meta support, right? Because they're the best out there. waiting 2 months for controllers from them if they don't lose it on you.
I can't complain. I got my controller in like a week. It was wondrous. I was such a smooth process. It was out of warranty and they still gave it to me, like no issues. I have no complaints. At least as far as Meta or Oculus Canada, whatever you want to call them, they did me good.
Yeah, they put me out of commission for 2 months.
Yeah, that sucks.
I tried to. I'm like, they wanted me to send. Both my controllers went out, drift on both sides. They wanted me to send them in separately. I'm like, can we just get the same RM? Can I get the RMA numbers for both? Send them back to you so I get them both back at the same time. So I'm not sitting here just waiting for one. I just want to get them in together so they come back together. So once it's here, I'm ready to go. I don't want to be sitting here for another 3 weeks waiting for another one after you send me this one. And then, I've just had a nightmare with their customer service there. But Sony, different story, But like I said, they're doing what they can right now.
They're a hardware company, right? Like that's the thing. Like you're comparing a hardware company with a company that's like pretending to be a hardware company. I mean, they're learning, and I think they're learning.
Sony's more of a licensing company, technically, if you want to look at it like that. They're like Microsoft, right? They make their money off of licensing, not equipment.
Well, I mean, but Sony. I memean, they've been making electrical hardware forever. Like it's just like let's let them do what they do. Meta, I'm just saying, like they're pretty new to this game, and so they need some failures. Sure, Sony's had their share, and I just think it's just too soon to be making comments like this. Just bullshit, and it just feeds. You know what? Even my bullshit meter went off immediately, and even in the Quest groups, they're like, nah, I don't know about this. Like, I thought the Quest group would be like, see, PC is better, and they weren't. They were like, I don't know about this.
The doom and gloomers, the guys since the start that have been against it, that the ones that are very vocal on those groups, and those of you who are part of those Facebook groups know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's just that hate back and forth. Oh, it's blah blah blah. Oh, the wire. Oh, blah blah blah. It's like keep trying to explain to them. All VR benefits all of us,
and that's
This isn't console wars. And anything that comes for either one of these things benefits everybody here. The more interest in it means AAA titles like people want. But if you keep slashing, if you keep cutting each other in the throat and stabbing each other in the back, like and fighting over this, like that's not going to help.
Well,
it might help the companies on their sales, like on each other's side, but that doesn't help VR as a whole.
But it doesn't help those companies in the long run because if VR fails, then they all fail. And I also look at any PSVR 2 headset sold as like I don't look at it as just PSVR 2 like in a silo. I mean, to a certain degree, maybe when we look at exclusives, but I look at it as like for premium VR, for games like Vertigo 2, I look at for somebody like that, I feel like he's got to be looking at PC and PSVR 2 as two possible places he can drop that game. And so I feel like it lifts everybody up. And you know, I think it's too soon to jump on the hate train. But keeping an eye on our time here, I wanted to switch over to our primary topic, and that was accessibility in VR. It's something that Jason and I have talked about for years. Jason has his own physical struggles, and so he was someone we really wanted to bring into the conversation, because the only thing that Ryan and I can really complain about is just being like old and lazy.
Well, and
So-
don't forget your mental struggles. I mean, those are a real thing too.
Yeah, but we don't talk about those. Jay, why don't you? I'd asked you before if you minded like sharing with people kind of what was going on with you, and of course anybody in chat, if you want to share, go nuts.
Why are you here, Jason? Why are you here?
We want to shine a spotlight on this. We want to have a bit of a spotlight on this. So Jay,
Appreciate
give us a heads up.
Yeah, for my personal issues myself, I have a lot of spinal issues. I have cervical issues. I have nerve damage there, which causes slower reaction times for thinking. I have severe carpal that goes down completely down my arms to my hands, so upper mobility issues are a big thing for me. How long can I play a game for? Et cetera with that. Going down, I have scoliosis in the center. I have dual sciatica at the bottom, and now I'm finding out I may have trouble with the joints there too as well. So I am pretty much limited to being seated repeatedly. To stand up for a game, I might be able to do it for like a minute or two. Others, like myself, may not have that option at all. So what I focus on, well, sorry, I'm branching off there. Besides that, I have seizure-like episodes I deal with, and I know I'm forgetting stuff there, but these are the main things that really affect playing VR for me in this case. So a lot of the work I will try to do in the background with people and developers is trying to get things in there. There's going to be a lot of things in games that you guys are seeing that you didn't know where they came from. And to branch off there, what is accessibility for people? Accessibility is something that can help you play a game. It could be a difficulty setting. It could be anything from colorblind mode to where you can't see like a red or green, or you can't see a yellow or blue in that case there, or you just can't see colors at all. There can be the size of a text, the size of the 12-point font on something that you can't read on your TV from there. It could be a height adjustment. It could be anything that can help you do that. That's where accessibility falls in here. And a lot of times within these VR games, those kind of things are ignored, which is where we're going to segue into what you want to cover next. I'm sure is Pavlov.
Well,
I mean,
that was gonna be my my sample title, just because it's so interface right now, and I'm dealing with it. I'm working on a Pavlov review, guys. Kind of like the last of our, I guess, like reviews we're trying to catch up on, at least of the major ones. But yeah, and I mean, we are, I think as a gaming industry, we are seeing much more accessibility, like in flat games, and especially in the AAA games. Some games are going like batshit crazy with accessibility. I mean, just about anything you could do for hearing impaired and vision impairment. We're starting to see like Sony obviously is bringing out that new controller. But again, Jason and I have been talking about this for a long time, mainly because of Jason's passion around this and his interest, and he's often been a bit of a big advocate for people, even in his own channel, to bring awareness. But in VR, I said to Jay, like, it's such a huge component of like VR that it's a whole new level of accessibility, because it's not just can you see and can you hear something on the screen and what's the dexterity of your hands. It's like can you move to play the game. These games are all about physicality. And I said to him, like, there's Jason's point of view of how he looks at games, and then there's also like the I guess like the everyday person who doesn't have it necessarily anything that would be considered a disability, but we still have to, like, maybe, like, I come home from a day of work, Ryan comes home from a day of work, we don't want to stand to play a game, we want to sit to play a game. That I think is on like one spectrum of kind of like the basic shit, and then there's taking it to another level that Jason has. I mean, let me talk. Okay, I'll talk about Pavlov just because I mentioned it and I've been bitching about it, and then I'll let Jason kind of jump off of that.
Sure.
I my problem with Pavlov right off the hop was that it doesn't have a seated option at all. Like, it's, in fact, it tells you on the front screen, this is a highly physical game and must be played standing, and it doesn't have any options in the game for that, and it doesn't have a crouch button. So if you drop a gun, you've got to bend down and pick it up. Now, we're going to get into this because I feel like there is arguments around, at least I believe there's arguments to be made about that not every game has to be for every person. And I know that there's debates around that. We're going to get into that for sure. But with a game like Pavlov, if you want to look at it by game situation, I'm like, this is not a hardcore shooter. Like, it might have the gunplay of a hardcore shooter, but this is not Onward. Onward makes you like lay down to set up your sniper rifle and your tripod, and it makes you crouch, and it makes it is a military simulator. And so I kind of feel like that game has 100% embraced that. And do I think it should have a crouch and a seated option? I don't know, but
yes,
I guess
it should.
but I feel like that is a game that is like they are 100% committed to being a military sim. And so the idea that, like, like the fact that a lot of people who play that game think it's very, very important that someone actually has to lay down and set up a sniper rifle, like, that is so key to its gameplay that I feel like at least an argument could be made that game, like, that's its jam. Pavlov is a run and gun shooter where giving someone the ability to play seated or hit a crouch button, if anything, is going to still put them at a disadvantage in the game. Like, the guys who are going to stand up and freaking pull backflips in their living room are still going to have a much higher advantage over those people. So be it. Like, I mean, let people play it how they want to play it. All you have to do is turn on public chat, and you'll immediately find out this is not a hardcore serious shooter game. It's it's a bunch of people like screaming and yelling at each other, and it's not a team-based game. Like, it's not a hardcore game. There's no reason why it can't be accessible to other people. And that just really irritates me.
Well, I mean, but and the thing is, by that same exact logic, then there should be no option to use thumbsticks to turn. You should have to turn in real life, or like, so they've given the option to turn using thumbsticks, but not the option to duck using a button. And it's like, well, why is that the line? Like, then that to me, like, if you're gonna be that hardcore, then be that hardcore,
Yeah.
and I guess commit to your guns. But you've already placed accessibility options in there. You've just stopped at a certain point. That just doesn't. It just doesn't seem like the right choice. Like I said, some games are a little bit harder to like not criticize, I guess, but I mean, judge, I guess. Playing Creed, I guess, would be a good example of that, where a boxing game where you have to be physical. There's no other way around. You can't just press X to punch. And I guess what we're talking about is should there be an argument that if you can't use your arms or limited movement, but you want to play Creed, should there be an option in there for you in this VR game? And it's just, I'm not sure where the onus lies in that kind of stuff in regards to.
That becomes a tough one.
Yeah.
Because for somebody like me, you would have to. They might not be able to swing as hard as somebody else there for full strength hit. I might not be able to hit you as hard, right, in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So if they would have something as a slider that would strength, then they're going to be like, well, who says anybody else can't use it? That'll be an excuse I would.
Now it's steroids and Creed you're talking about. I like this. I like this.
Yeah. So it makes sense to a certain degree, but like, what if I just wanted to play with my other buddy?
Well,
It
this
was
is
like
what,
that.
yeah. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah. If you like, maybe if you want to do a match, do it to where you can force it to only have people like that if that's who you want to play against. Or if not, I mean, it might exclude some people, but it'll still give people a chance to play the game. So there's a lot of, I mean, there is so many different instances of this here. Like if you look at Onward, yes, I tried working with them. I asked them, is there any way you could put a crouch and prone button in here? Because I'm like, as soon as if I get in here and I drop my gun, I can't pick it up.
Right.
Because unless I want to put myself at 3 feet tall and walk around like this the entire game, where people are just going to run right over me and kill me in a second. So like if I play that with somebody, I have to be like, hey, can you pick up my knife for me, man? I just dropped my knife. You know, there is no option in there. They wouldn't break. I get it. You know what I mean? That's what the vision you wanted for your game. If you want to limit the kind of people you sell it to, then do it that way, right? You know what I mean? If you look at Pavlov, there should be no excuse. I went to go play Pavlov. All the friends were playing it here on the PlayStation VR 2. Wanted to give it a try. Never played it before. Couldn't even get past the tutorial because it requires you to stand up to even get your guns or do anything in there.
Yep.
And yeah, maybe I could do that for a second, but like then there's no way I'm going to be able to play the game like that, even if I get through that tutorial, because again, I'm going to be crawling through the entire thing, and that's it. That'll be my game.
Mm-hmm.
Some like if you go on the PC side or like even on the Quest, they have a height adjustment. So like if I'm playing mini golf, I'm not 3 feet tall, right? So you go in there and you hit that. PC side, they have like OVR advanced settings where you can up and lower your access. So even if I'm sitting, I'm normally a 6'4" tall guy. I can still feel like myself, right? Like, so to me, it's like, this is great because I can't do this in real life. So now I feel like myself running through a game again. It makes me happy. You know what I mean? And I'm sure other people like myself would be the same thing. It kind of gives you that little more, not that our limitations are bad or anything. So please don't take what I'm saying here the wrong way, but like, it's a great escape.
No,
Like for
and
me, I'm stuck here all day. Like this is, you see here, this is my office. This is my entertainment center. This is where I am 90% of my day.
VR
So yeah,
is a great leveler. One of the things I love about VR is that it eliminates in most cases race is an issue, age is an issue, um, disabilities is an issue in many ways. I mean, there are a lot of times when I've played with people and you just treat them as people. They don't have to necessarily be concerned with any of their own insecurities that they deal with in the real world. Like I love the fact that you know um in some ways people can have that escape if they want to. It's also great for people to become more social because again, like maybe some insecurities that they have over just interacting with people in the real world, like jumping into Rec Room and VR chat and stuff like this. I'm just saying that like there's just so much that VR can bring to make people feel like they belong, that there's opportunities, I think that need to be really highlighted, that will help, like you said, just something as much as like letting someone be the height that they are in real life is huge. Like, never mind the gameplay side of it, but just from a an emotional standpoint. You were mentioning about like the tools that Meta and Steam VR have. That is one of my biggest issues around this whole thing, with the PSVR 1 and the 2. It's like, what the heck, Sony? How do you not have a height adjustment tool in your base PSVR 2 settings? Like, I feel like that
yeah.
is inexcusable.
And
Um,
I can't even get their team to answer questions right now on this stuff either. Because people wanted to for comfort levels on there too, like how intensive is it for people, which is an accessibility thing too as well. So I wrote their guys at Able, like, hey, is there any way we could get this? Nothing.
You talk like just
If we want,
like labeling games, you mean, as far as like the
yeah, yeah,
intensity?
like,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, let me start from so people understand here. There's been a lot of push on the flat gaming side. I know a lot of those guys. I am part of that group there. Um, it's it's IDGA SIG, which is the Independent Game Developers Association Special Interest Group, which is pretty much all the accessibility people at Ubisoft, Sony, Microsoft, anywhere you name it. These are all the team of people here. This includes Steven Spohn, who does the Able Gamers charity that makes peripherals that people can game. They're responsible for the oh my god, I'm blanking on the name of it. But the pad that Microsoft did, to where even if you don't have a full size arm, you could still use it to get around it, and you would have your X and Y access. And there's lots of other tools like side buttons and stuff like can do that. Sony does not have that. Our biggest chance for that was on PSVR 1 with the 3D rudder. And being that they're no longer around, I can kind of talk about this now.
Yeah.
There was, and I know Sony may get mad at me for this, and I don't break embargoes, so this is a long time deal done, so please don't take it as this is what I'm going on right now. But for that 3D rudder, there was a push to add that to the accessibility list that would allow you to control the dead zone. And for any of these games, all they would have had to do was literally put an SDK on the games, and it could have been used there, which could have meant gaming for a lot of other people here. Using one hand, still using that there, and it could have meant a lot more gaming for people like myself on the PSVR 1.
And
but
not,
instead,
not
and
VR.
they had this here. When Sean Layden was there, as soon as he left, the team that was working on it just canceled it. And that was it. So they're supposedly having to try to get these groups. I try to get these guys, hey, can you help me with hardware? Can you do any of this? Nothing. I've had Oculus, their PR, tell me they were going to send me a Quest 1, Quest 2. We both know what happened with that, which is the reason why you guys in the community stepped up to help me. Because I have zero a month income. Without all of you guys and you guys helping me do this testing and everything, I wouldn't even be here talking to you right now. You guys have kept me alive and kept me working and helping people out there. I haven't been very vocal on what I've done this entire time, which I probably should have been more, because those guys on the flat side have been. And that's where you're noticing things are changing, like The Last of Us 2, especially, right?
For sure.
Like when you saw Blind Gamer Steve come out there on and all the papers and everything out there where he was talking about that, it started becoming more prevalent. They're hoping that switches over. Unfortunately, the main guy that pushes for all that stuff gets sick in VR. So he just ignores it. And I love those guys and I love what they're doing, but on our side, they really haven't helped us for VR.
Well, you brought up a good point there in regards to the fact that just where we are, where VR is at versus flat gaming, and the fact that flat gaming is just way ahead of the curve. On top of the fact too, I mean, flat gaming hasn't changed for for a long time. You're still playing with a controller on a TV set, and that's basically it, give or take some weird peripherals here and there. Whereas VR, we're still seeing new peripherals come, new changes, and just how you play games in VR, it does change. Like I've thought to myself, like, what if I ever, if I ever broke my hand or lost my hand or something stupid, it was like, I would still want to play VR. I do suffer from color blindness, you mentioned earlier, and for the most part, it's very mild. So for most games, it really doesn't bother me at all. It's just a few like reds, greens, and blues kind of like sometimes blend together. I still see them as normal, so like the game looks perfectly normal to me. Except when a game, Chroma Gun, was one that was awesome. Because what they did for Chroma Gun, you basically was like a portal. You had to like change colors of the walls and the color of your gunshot to like solve these puzzles. It doesn't really matter how it played. I had trouble seeing the orange and yellow in that. They looked very, very close, and I was constantly shooting the wrong ball at the wrong wall. And there's an option in the settings that basically colorblind mode, and it pops up little labels that shows you like symbols for which color is which. Man, that saved my ass, because and you don't, for accessibility, you don't know you need it until you do, and then once you do, and it's not there, well then you just miss it. And I can go back to like even just Chris saying standing. Like I stand a lot during my day. My feet are falling apart on me, and so whenever I can sit, it matters, because even playing Pavlov today for the half an hour, 45 minutes we did, like my feet hurt, and so I think it's easy to come from a side of like like where's the line, and this is a conversation I want to have as far as like where is the line, and then like what games should a boxing game, I guess, like I said, like how do you do that, but looking for a solution to these problems, like I said, outside looking in, it's easy to say like it doesn't matter, or like it's only a small portion of of people. So what does it matter? The game companies can't tailor their games to 2% of the player base, but maybe if you were that 2% and you want to play that game, it's a totally different story. So it's easy to be like it's easy to come from the side of like of being in decent good health and being like, yeah, I can do everything in VR. But I mean, I know if any of this was taken away from me for whatever reason, whether I lost an eye or anything like that, like I would be devastated if I couldn't play. I would be absolutely devastated. So, and coming back to my original thing, like because VR is so new, though, we're still seeing these baby steps in regard to that. And like you said, the 3D rudder was, I agree, that was that was an amazing step in the right direction. That just unfortunately through behind the scenes shenanigans just fell completely apart. And it shouldn't have. It really, I thought it was gonna be a way bigger success than it was, but the complete lack of support on the PSVR side just absolutely killed that product. And it was a product I actually enjoyed, just as an accessory. Like I said, it made, especially PSVR 2 obviously, but just controlling stuff with your feet and moving with your feet and having the moves, like actually, and having your hands available to just do what hands are supposed to do and not worry about button pressing to strafe and stuff. It's awesome. And that's the kind of accessibility we're also talking about.
I had a couple of games when that worked, like Wizards. I don't care if you have analog sticks or not. The ability to do all the casting.
Yeah.
And then my feet were doing feet stuff.
Yeah.
Like people talked about immersion. I'm like, my feet were doing feet stuff. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Scraper. I mean, with Scraper First Strike, is that what it's called? Something like that. Like you just basically played in like a wheelchair, an armed wheelchair, but you control with your feet, and it was awesome. Like,
oh, what game was Space Junkies? Oh man, I was just cruising in that game. It was amazing. And then I had 2 arms to do everything. Like, I mean, all of a sudden with the 3D rudder and 2 hands, I was taking out PC guys with analog sticks. I love that. I mean, one of my examples that I always think of, and this is something that Jason was involved in, as soon as I think of accessibility in VR and the debate around this, I think of Crisis Brigade. And that was with Crisis Brigade 2. And Jason, you can fill in the blanks here, but I remember that there was like
I love both those guys. Diego and Kano are both awesome guys there.
But there was a bit of a difference in opinion between the two of them, right?
Right. For that one in particular, I don't want to say which, right? And I'll just say that there was a discrepancy in between the two. One did not want it at all and wanted complete physicality for the game, and the other did. So there was quite a few months where they were back and forth on that before it did. And then once it did, they were wondering how to label it, right? Because they wanted for the leaderboards, that's the next step. How do you show a competitive side?
Which is why
and they wanted to put a wheelchair symbol in there for handicapped. I'm like, that can be a tough one because then that creates a negative stigma towards people like myself. Like, why don't you just put like a shield on there? Like, I could not play that game, right? Because I can't duck behind the wall. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm like, I'd love to play with you guys or my buddies, and I can't. So I'm like, is there anything you can do to help? And what they ended up doing was putting in a shield in there to suffice. So yeah, maybe I'm not doing 2-handed weapons, maybe I'm not doing that, but I could still hang with you with my shield and still shoot and still get through with you.
That's
maybe
really
I'm not going to be the biggest killer on that, and maybe I'm not going to be able to hang with you, but I'm still being able to enjoy the game with you, and that makes a big difference.
No, that's a really good point. And just the fact that you said, the goal of this isn't, like I said, the goal of this isn't to make the game 100% like I gotta be able to play every single aspect, but as long as I can get in there and play and have fun, and I'm not being, like basically, not hurt, but like unnecessarily like held back for no better reason than just because the devs think like ducking in real life is more immersive than a duck button. Yeah. And I agree. I as much as I enjoyed the physicality, I love the Crisis Brigade, whatever they say that it is now. I love the physicality in that game. Like the idea of like the hiding behind there and ducking it. Like it was a crazy physical, fun VR experience. One of the best ones you can get on PSVR 1 actually, just because it used the space quite well. But there's no reason why you couldn't throw, like I said, a duck button in there. because it wouldn't just leaderboards, I guess, is an argument, but
that is a huge argument though. And
Yeah.
Jason and I did debate this a little bit, and I think I said that like you can't understate that because you could kill your leaderboards. Like you could make them completely useless because leader guys who are high score chasing will take advantage of that.
oh, for
And
sure.
so what I had said was like an option was I honestly thought that not having they should absolutely have a duck button in there. Your game's already getting compared endlessly to Time Crisis.
Mhm.
Give them a duck button and then give them but then it's like a 20% reduction in points or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I don't know if that's the answer because at the same time, I don't want to necessarily, I don't want to feel like people like Jason who can't physically crouch feel like they're being penalized. But I also feel like a guy like Jason, as soon as he has a crouch button, he's going to be top of the leaderboards. Like, I mean, the fact that he can play it as soon as he can play it properly, and getting up and down is not really an issue. I don't know. I don't know if that's the answer, but I felt like that could have been an option. The shield's one way, but I still feel like then the leaderboard's still a question
Yeah.
mark. I just
You could
feel like
you could even separate shield and non-shield leaderboards. I
Yep,
mean, you could
and
still
I think that was the way to do it.
then it allows me to be competitive within my
Yep.
own group of people there, or people that want to use that there, right? It puts it on an even playing field. I'm okay with that. I don't need to be included with everything and everybody all the time with that. I'm gonna take. Sorry, if you guys don't mind, we'll take a few minutes here and start and say something here. Both Sony and Meta do the stuff for colorblind. They do sometimes the left-handed mode, and they do have height adjustment and a couple other things there. As far as peripherals are concerned, there is nothing. But there are millions of gamers like myself, and there are millions of gamers that aren't disabled like myself that use these options and don't realize that they're put there for particular reasons. Do I expect every game to have it? No. Would it be awesome? Yes. But I'm not going to sit there and be like yelling at the developer because they couldn't make the game for me, right? But if my goal is working with the developers in the past is get them to know people like me and see that we love VR just as much as anybody else. So maybe next time when you're working on your game, take into consideration from the start, right? Then that's what a lot of these guys are doing right now on the flat side and on the VR side is trying to get these developers just think about it on your design. If you build it that way, then it'll be there already. If you don't want to build it that way, fine. But you're going to limit the amount of people you're going to be able to sell this thing to.
Now, you guys were saying before we started here, and I didn't really know this, that it's like the law that at least that's kind of
U.S. base. Yeah, the U.S. base for the law is websites like anything web or electronics have to be accessible for people out there. Do everybody adhere to it? No. Do we sue everybody that doesn't? No.
Now that makes a lot of sense to me.
It's not trying to create a negative stigma towards people because we're already pretty much an ignored group as is, right? A lot of people don't want to, see somebody with a disability. It makes them feel uncomfortable or this or that. It's whatever. I'm a person, right? And yeah, maybe I might not be as physically disabled as a lot of other people out there, but I'm a person. I want to experience these things. Right now, we don't have enough people on the VR side covering accessibility. I will be starting as of next week. I'll announce that I'm going to start covering stuff for accessibility because we need more of a presence out there.
Yeah.
It really irked me to see Meta put the ambassadors out there, and there was absolutely no representation on our side at all. Not one, just ignored. Nothing. After everything they've done the entire time here, they don't do enough that people are starting to give up. Like I know a lot of guys that started doing accessibility side on the VR, and they kind of just give up because, they start focusing more on the flat gaming side, which is where it's happening, and more changes can be made. Once it becomes more of a standard there, that will flow over into all of gaming. But like again, where do you, like you said, where do you draw the line? I don't want to get people pissed off with me, but I want people to at least, take me into consideration if you can.
Mhm.
And a lot of these guys don't have a big enough team after the fact to fix these kind of games, right? That's another topic. Say you go with somebody like Zach working on Vertigo 2. Luckily, he's on Steam, so I have all the OBS advanced settings I could use on there to forge my height or do whatever I need to play that game. So there are ways for me to do that. Once it gets to the PSVR 2 side, that may be a different story, right? I can't adjust my height. I can't do anything else on those kind of things. There isn't many options for me to do anything.
No, it's bullshit.
If I had a height adjustment option, maybe I could have played Onward. But there's nothing. And I'm asking these guys, why is there nothing? What have you guys been doing for the last fucking year and a half on this shit? And I hate to, I sound bad because I'm getting mad at my own people, but it's like, dude, great. You guys got, the colorblind modes and you got the other stuff there. There are other people besides this that want to play.
No, you made a good point there. Just the fact that you said, like after the fact is one thing. They said these are small teams. We can't expect them to move mountains, especially when in the VR market space where games aren't, some games sell a lot, obviously, but other games, they might even make their money back. So to then ask these developers, that's the fact, like, could you add this? It just might not be fiscally feasible for these teams to do that.
Right.
But like you said, so taking taking these things into account, ahead of, during development or ahead of development, changes the game, because now it's much easier to include in the game and adapt your game around whatever limitations you can. Not all limitations, depending on what game you're making, obviously. But it definitely does, it's something that more developers should definitely think about, for sure.
Let's give an example. Horizon Call the Mountain. This is a Sony published game. It's a big release for them, a lot of money, and a game that at its core was very accessible VR. Like, it was definitely designed as a entrance point for new VR gamers to be something that was like comfortable and easy to play and not too deep gameplay mechanics, and everything about that game was accessible. And yet, like, why doesn't it have the same level of accessibility options, even from just a visual and sound point of view, that Last of Us does? Has nothing. And why doesn't it have the ability to, maybe for people with reduced upper body mobility, to make it so that maybe climbing can just be done like this, like small movements, instead of having to do the full reach? Maybe there'd be some kind of a slider there for people. I just feel like I don't have the answers necessarily, because it's like no one's doing it. Like, it's just no one. I mean, Pavlov.
I think
I hate to shit on Pavlov. I'm want to shit on Pavlov for a minute. They completely made no effort to try to do anything for anyone. I was saying to Ryan, I'm like, look at the menus. It's like even the game modes, you look at, it's all acronyms. I'm like, I don't even know what TTT is. And when you go to the filter where they actually show you the full names of things, it's still just TTT. I don't know what TTT is. At no point do they ever even have any menu system to show you and tell you what any of their modes are. Like, there's just a zero lack of fucks given around trying to communicate their game to people. Not once do they actually have the guns listed of what the gun is, what the gun stats are. Nothing. My review is not gonna be super glowing for Pavlov like some people's have. I really like the game, but I have a lot that irritates me about that game, and just the sheer lack of accessibility across the board drives me nuts. Anyway.
What I was going to say is that, I think, and that's one of the big things with VR, and this is obviously something that I can't fully wrap my head around, is, when you think of VR and you think of immersion, or at least the way, I think myself and most people think of immersion, is the idea of, you have your hands in VR, you can do all these things, you're climbing mountains, this is why you're in VR, it's that physicality. And I think because of that, and not even faulting developers, if you're getting excited for making a climbing game, I don't know if your first response is, a climbing game, but how do we tailor our game to people who maybe don't have upper mobility, or upper mobility issues rather? That's not your first thought. And So, and I guess that's why we're having this conversation. I remember, it's just like these are the conversations that have to start changing. Just how these games are made, because I get it. I mean, like I said, I guess look at Robinson, the Journey. How upset were we on PSVR that it was like press R and L to use your right hand and left hand to climb, when all we want to do is grab with our actual hands. That's an excellent accessibility option for those that maybe can't use their hands. And RL is easy. I mean, that's how you climb in Horizon. Look where you're gonna go. R, right hand. L, right? And I'm not trying to slam Horizon here. I'm just saying that there are some very simple solutions, I think, to these problems that still will allow people to experience VR games, or right there, just experience VR games, period. And so that's kind of what I wanted to say, is that, it's getting this thought process in mind of just developing games with accessibility in mind. And that's, said every time I see a colorblind option in the options, I get excited. It's still rare. It's so rare. Every time I play a game, I go to the options first to see what's in there, because you never know what VR options will be in a VR game. It could be anything from just clicker smooth turning to who knows. And every time I see like a colorblind option, and if it actually like it even says like Deuteron, or like, this actually labels like what kind of color, I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. And that's just my stupid little, I have like the mildest little colorblind thing in the planet, but that every time I see it excites me. So I can't imagine what it'd be like if you were terminology, if I'm using it wrong, I apologize. But if you had a disability of some type and you went to the options in the VR game and there was an option there that accounted for your lack of a mobility, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
So the problem that I think that the developers have, I mean, let's be honest, as people who have played VR since pretty much the beginning, and for guys who review games, when developers can't even necessarily always put in smooth turning or
dude, left hand, right hand. Like, how many games don't even have a left hand option still? Yeah. Like in VR, like
left eye, right eye stuff. Like, and it was scopes and everything. Like when they can't even do the basics, it's like to expect, and I think that's like, I can't believe that. But the other thing is, I think a lot of developers are unaware, which is why I think it's so important for guys like Jason to start bringing awareness, and because bringing awareness to them,
they're leaving me no choice.
They're unaware. I honestly think that developers, even like the big developers, but we know how many developers kind of just put their head in the sand and don't even realize what other VR games are doing.
Yeah,
it's mind blowing to me. How someone asked on Twitter, they're like, make a game, do you have to be a gamer? Yeah, you probably should. Or like I said, or be surrounded by people, because it blows my mind sometimes the absolute like naivety or ignorance of these developers. But where I'm going with this is that I think a lot of developers, when they want to make a VR game, they just look at it as like, the people who want to play this, they want a VR. Like, they want to be physical in a game. They want to be, like, I don't think they think of gamers.
That's why we're all buying VR treadmills right now, flying off the shelves.
And I think a lot of people think they want a treadmill. And I preface that as think they want a treadmill.
I want it to actually work. If I was going to go work out and play Call of Duty, I would want a treadmill. But I would never want to play Call of Duty with a treadmill. That's insane.
No, I always use the joke of like playing Battlefield in VR on a treadmill, and you like 5, 10 minute, 20-minute run across the field. Oh, okay, guys, I'm here. Like back to the settings again. Oh my god, I'm back at the beginning. And it's just, anyways, I just think a lot of developers look at it and they just they don't think of the guys sitting on their couch playing GT7 with a controller. They don't think of that as being one, like a side of the VR market who just is getting so much out of just being immersed in the world. They think of, I think a lot of them think of people being physical and being nuts in VR.
Can I jump in on one thing here?
Totally.
Like, I love what they're doing with the AR stuff and these open kind of, you can walk through kind of. Is that going to be for somebody like me? No. Do those advancements, are they going to help VR? Yes. But I also don't want that to be like the only thing for the future now, because if that's what's going on, right, and we're going to have to move everywhere around with our, then that's going to limit my gaming completely there, which is fine. You know what I mean? Like, if it is going to be what it is. Like I said, I'm not here to choke people out for not doing, not adding it to your game. But if you want to make more money, do it.
Well,
Like it's that easy. You're
That
going to
is
get
a
that
tough
many
one.
more sales. But like, if you want to limit it to like something like Pavlov, where you don't want that many people to play, and you want a bunch of physical people doing it, great. You know what I mean? I don't need to play every game out there.
And
Would I like
and
to?
I've
Maybe, probably not.
and I
Right? To be
and I've
to
I've
be
said
realistic. Yeah.
and I've said to you, Jason, since the beginning, I said I do not feel that every game has to be for every person. In fact, that attitude pisses me off. Um, this I'm all for inclusivity, like even out of like we're talking about accessibility as far as like um physicality goes. I'm all for inclusivity, but at the same time I do feel that that they have every right to make a tailored experience, and we want that. I mean, we do. We want people to be able to go like, I really want to make this game, and make it as hardcore and as tailored as they necessarily want. Like, I mean, it would be like saying, like, GT7, for example, is a hardcore racer. I refer to my review as like kind of like the Dark Souls of racing games, at least for the masses.
People
And
didn't like that comment, by the way.
fuck them. And uh you can put on assists. You can put on like braking lines, driving lines. You can put on traction assist. You can you just all these, and balancing assists. There's all these assists that you can put on to help with it. But at the end of the day, it's a sim
Yeah.
racer.
Those are accessibility settings.
I know they are.
Plain and simple.
Basically,
For anybody.
they are,
Yeah.
and they're in every
For
racing
those
game.
that don't know, yeah.
No, but they still don't take away from the fact that it is still a sim racer. And when you go into the online competitive environments, a lot of people will make it so those settings cannot be on. That's their choice, though, to have curated races in that regard.
Yeah.
But that person can go play the game they want to play. And you'll notice that I would say a majority of racing games that are made for large groups of people, you'll notice that they have a percentage. This is what I was talking about with Crisis Brigade, is that the racing game example would be the more assists you put on, the greater reduction in XP that you get, because it makes the game easier. But you're still crushing XP. You're just not getting quite as much. I think that's fair.
Yeah. Can I go up one more thing here?
For sure.
I'm going to go far back to the Sekiro debate, the huge thing that started a lot of this back then.
As in like the Dark Souls games.
As in the Dark Souls kind of games. There was the big thing with them putting a difficulty level on there, and the hardcore people were just, and they're still doing it till today, will just sit there and come after us and basically say that we're ruining their experience and stuff like that. Like, they shouldn't be able to beat the game if they can't play it on this, or they shouldn't even play it at all, period. Like, that's, like, if you want, I don't understand how in something like that, where if they want to play it on the hardest difficulty and beat it and brag about it, do it. But why does it affect their life so much if there was a lower difficulty on there? So at least somebody that has maybe a slower response time, or maybe not be able to hit those buttons as quick, might be able to still play the game and have fun with it. Like, why is it such a big deal to them? Like, is it?
I mean, I can't
like,
tell you.
Well, is it your pride going to be that hurt because somebody else can play that game? I mean, like, are you that much of an egotistical kind of dude, or
I'm
that
guilty.
you can't do?
I'm guilty of being that person in some. I'll explain. I'm guilty. When that came up, I actually did take the argument of like, no, like, if like the Souls games are Souls games, they're supposed to be really freaking hard, and that was like the point of them. And I think I took that stance of like, boo-hoo, like, but in reflection and listening to Jay talk about that, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really see a problem with them including a reduced difficulty level. I mean, at the end of the day, who are you hurting?
Yeah, every time I hit that get good, I want to punch somebody in the fucking nuts, dude. I swear to God, man, that word stay.
I mean,
even people joke about it. It's
I
just
guess
that was
I guess at the end of the day, I just don't think that the developer should feel that they have to do that. I just feel like it
No,
should be something that is up to them that they should want to do. I mean,
but they
I
did. They wanted to do it, and everybody was fighting against them for it.
well, you know what the
Like
tough thing is? I
so,
remember this
yeah,
conversation with you now. I remember the problem is, and I'll give them this, is that the problem that say like From Software has with specifically the Dark Souls games being like kind of their brand is around being really hard. So it is a tough one when your brand is being impossible or being very, very hard. That they had, I guess, I understand. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with the decision. I understand the difficulty in around that is that if the game is no long if it can be played a different way, then it's not it's no longer the thing that it was. It's tough. It is. It's a thing. It becomes it becomes a debate of whether I understand both points, I guess is what I'm getting at. Um, and that there should be I feel like there should be a difficulty slider, but at the same time, does it make it not no longer a Dark Souls game? I don't know.
doesn't mean it's not that difficult to somebody with lesser abilities there.
I
Maybe it's
don't
still just as much of a challenge, and it's still the same thing they intended to get across. I can see what you're saying there,
and I think where
but
people
something
I think
like that is a tough one, right?
I think where people
Physicality,
get
VR is a little
short-sighted
different story. Yeah.
I think where people get short-sighted is that they don't think of the people who are still gonna get their ass like are still gonna get say like the same experience because they just have some type of a some kind of a movement disability or whatever the reason. They just think of people just taking advantage of it and beating the game. And I agree with you. At the end of the day, I think I do think I revised my statement that I think at the end of the day they probably should allow that flexibility. And really, I mean,
Yeah, if you're the guy that wants to beat it on the extreme difficulty, do it. And if you need to brag about it, brag about it.
that's what I'm
But
saying. The people who really give a
how
shit
much-
are going to be like,
yeah.
"Oh, did you play Elden Ring on normal mode?" Like they're going to say
Yeah.
that, and so let them say that.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, like, yeah, there's certain games where I don't have a quick enough response time, right? And the fact that they still have a lower difficulty, yeah, I might not, I might be like, well, I can only beat it on easy, but I could still beat it. You know what I mean? I could still play through the game and enjoy it. Like, but yeah, like you said, yeah, not everything. VR poses a different problem because a lot of it's physicality.
Mm-hmm.
But there shouldn't be any reason when the developer is saying that they want to do it that the whole community basically chokes them out to the point where they won't do it because they're just being so negative about it. It's just
we don't want to become Star Wars fanboys.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with being a Star Wars fanboy.
Yes, yeah, it is the most toxic fandom where it's like you don't even know what you want anymore. You can't be pleased. Yeah,
look, I know what I want. Okay,
just give me the trilogy, the original trilogy, every time, and we'd be good.
Well,
we gave you The Force Awakens, and it was A New Hope. No, I don't want the same movie.
I don't.
Anyway, no, it's like I said, I think at the beginning of the conversation, I feel like it has to be on a game by game basis. I just really wish that developers would just take that extra level of thought. Especially the bigger titles. I just there are very few games that I have ever played in my entire life where I feel like you couldn't allow a seated play option. The one that comes to mind is Onward. I feel like Onward is just trying to be a very specific, hardcore military sim. It's Arma basically in VR. It is front to back. And I just feel like that is an example that just comes to my head of a game that's like, you know what, you need to be for purists. I get that, I guess, to a certain degree. But at the end of the day,
yeah,
you could argue that they could have multiplayer lobbies that allowed accessibility options, and those people could have fun in it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's games like
or maybe those people just go play Contractors. I don't know.
Like games like playing Creed right now, obviously, which is a very arcadey take on boxing. I could see there being a lot more comfort options or accessibility options in that than say a game like Thrill the Fight, which is 100% a boxing sim in VR, and that's what they're going. Like, they are straight like that. That is the goal. Like, this is if you can make this your play space the size of the ring, you can play in the size of a ring and move around and dance around that thing, and you are full. That is the hard. Like, one of the most intense VR games I've ever played is Thrill the Fight, because after like a few rounds of like full on boxing, like, you're exhausted. And so, so Thrill the Fight, maybe the
That's
options are
that's
sorry.
the game. I feel like that's an onward situation in
Yeah.
some way.
Yeah,
That is
you're so
Yeah, Creed
you're very much limited in that is in regards to accessibility. Whereas, like I said, but then there's something like Creed. There are a few more options you can mess around with that still make the game. So there's levels to this. Is what we're saying here. Like, not every game is made
yes.
equal. We're not saying every game should be
Yeah,
should be playable by everyone on every single level. But there are options to allow more people to play this. And as all of us are like crazy VR enthusiasts who love putting people in VR headsets, the more people we can put in VR, the better. And that really is the bottom line here. If like man, even IPD, like the accessibility IPD issues, people still have IPD problems on current gen headsets. It's still happening now. So like if you're not thinking about accessibility just because it's never affected you, it even something as simple as IPD could be affecting somebody else negatively, where now they can't enjoy VR the way you can. And that's the kind of stuff we're talking about here. It's just this,
yeah,
just what you can do for your game, do it. And
yeah.
not
The eye tracking also on these headsets allows for a lot of capabilities too as well, because that can be used for blinking or different kind of eye movements. That and
Did you hear how
yeah,
Song of the Smoke's using it? There's for people who are, if you're like climbing ledges, they've
mhm.
combined it now where your the eye tracking when you look to the ledge, it like that, and then like basically like lift you basically like any movement that you make, it then jumps.
Yes,
It's using that as it's combining the two to make it feel more seamless.
yeah, that's a combination between Duty does VR, and there's been a couple suggestions I've thrown their way too as well. But yeah, that's also meeting people like Jake and getting to know them, and them starting to, once you start having somebody like me or others in your life, you start thinking about this a little more,
Big time.
right? Because other people might feel the same way, and there might be somebody that's so hardcore against these kind of things, right? And what happens with the day where they lose some mobility or something else there?
Yeah, I thought Ryan.
Then
well.
what happens there? Then do they become an advocate after being so pessimistic towards it after a while? Like the empathy in this world is just kind of ridiculous at sometimes, right? Some people care, some people don't. I get it. You know what I mean?
No, but I think
And
Ryan put it really well. I think for all of us, it's really important to just, and I have had the thought too that Ryan just did, of like that, like what if I often think about my eyes. Like what if I lost what if I lost like my vision went, like messed up. I think of like Paradise Decay. And I think of like when he was having eye problems there, and he was basically, it's like, can you even play VR anymore? Like to just have that taken away. I mean, in the grand
yeah,
scheme of things,
well,
not being able to play at VR is not the end of the world in the grand scheme of things. But for this conversation, and if you just like lost some major physicality, like we talked in one episode, aging out of VR. That's just another. That's a very general thing that a lot of us are going to have to deal with as we get older.
the hell
And
with that.
well, I mean, it's like, you remember Dr. Dave? Remember when we
yep,
met Dr. Dave?
hmm
Dr. Dave, for those of you who don't know, used to be the head of the Sony London, the PlayStation out there. He is part of the original creators of SingStar, who originally created that game for his buddy who was quadriplegic, because he wanted to sing, and that's why he did that. The reason Arca's Path was made and why so many people didn't understand that there was so he knew this wasn't going to be a big seller, right? He just wanted to make a game for people that were quadriplegic so they can play VR, and that was it. You know what I mean? So like, he based his whole game off of that thing. People didn't understand it, which is fine. You know what I mean? But it's there for the people that need it. Do I expect people to make games like that on a regular? No. Going back to the eye tracking stuff, I sorry, I forgot to go on a topic there. That can be used for eye gaze. which, like you said, you gave an example of can help there too as well. There's a I'm hoping he still works on it, but there's other people trying to get to work on it too. Is using eye gaze and BCI, the brain control interface, to allow movement and other stuff like that in there, because that means finally quadriplegic people could play VR on their own without using something else to assist. Like there's other, again, going back to the PC, there's walk-in VR there that allows, you can use any controller, assign it just like you can in Steam, to allow anybody to play. So it's such a beautiful thing that can allow anybody to experience anything there. Anything can be. Is it going to fit for every game like we talked about? No. Like I'm saying, there's lots of advancements being made here to help people, but not as much on the VR side. Sorry, I feel like I took it off a whole nother.
No, I completely. No, that's really interesting. That's really interesting.
I'm gonna go back and review my Arcus Path and maybe change that score.
Well, see, people don't understand why certain things are put out there, and I get it. You know what I mean? But if you don't,
again, it's not every game has to be for every person, and that goes both ways.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like where a game can be definitely aimed at a certain market. I mean, like you said, unfortunately, the market of people who are like VR market's already fairly small, and then out of that market, then you have this incredibly small and not maybe very vocal, which is why people like you are so important to bring awareness, because I honestly think that a lot of this has to start at Sony. Just something as simple as Sony not having a height adjustment is mind-blowing to me. It is so basic. So it's just like saying if you have to sit down, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, in all fairness, they didn't label that as a sitting game.
Which one?
They Pavlov. If you look at it,
Pavlov. I'm just saying in general. I'm just saying Sony, as just if they can't even put the option to raise your height adjustment, to just change your frickin' floor height, even anything, like if you can't do something as basic as that, in your core settings, like that you don't even think about it or don't care, or like it's just like mind blowing to me.
Left hand, right hand.
Or how about the little tiny circle we gotta be in for seated mode?
Yeah, right.
Like they're penalizing me for having to play seated. Like I got long ass arms. As soon as I reach out for anything, I get the red circle. That takes me right out of the game. It's How do you have people in fucking place there that, number one, don't have any comfort stuff on there for them, don't have any height adjustment, and then don't have any adjustment for that sitting? Like, how did all of this get left behind when they had a fucking team here to do it? Yeah, so like this is. And unfortunately, particularly like look, a lot of developers, I'm not going to be crawling up your ass, but the big companies, yes, we're going to be crawling up your ass coming up. So be ready for it.
I agree. But my point is, if Sony can't do the basic things, it's like, man, we got an uphill battle. And unlike PC, there isn't the ability to someone just have a plugin. I mean, Meta's got that height adjustment. They bury it. It's not even necessarily intuitive where it is and how it works, because it just kind of makes adjustments. You have no control. It just makes it. But they didn't have that for the longest time. So I'm not giving them too much credit for that yet. That was only brought in, I think, in the last year or so. I just to reiterate, like I see people talking like I mean, like we talk about quadriplegics. It's like, yes, that is an extreme that is very hard to necessarily cater for. And I at no point think that developers need to be necessarily like, well, but can a quadriplegic play our game? Because at the end of the day, VR is still going to be for people who prefer to play physically. I just don't think a lot of quadriplegics are going like, man, I wish I could play super hot. Like, I don't necessarily think that that's in their scope of what they're at least for a lot of them that they want to do. I just, at the end of the day, I think the most that I could hope for is just that there is a level of mindfulness that developers, like you said, will have, especially in the early stages of game development, and just kind of like deciding just at least having the conversation of like what type of game they want to make and who they might be restricting by if they go, no, this is the game we want to make, fine, but having those conversations about how could we possibly make this more accessible for certain people. I don't know. I
F
just
yeah,
feel
Chris. F yeah.
because
Yeah, I
right
mean,
now there just seems to be almost no accessibility options in VR, period.
well, there has been. You just don't realize that there are actually accessibility options for a lot of you guys.
What do you
True.
mean,
Is it-
you guys? I'm just kidding.
Well, I think I
For
mean
those people that don't need to use them
I
and
know,
just
I
see they're there and don't understand why they're there, that's why they're there.
well, I think we all think of
Yeah.
comfort options. I mean, as a reviewer, I've always felt that it was very important in every review to let people know if it was seated, standing, click turning,
Yeah.
smooth turning, and whether there was comfort settings for sickness.
Well, like if you look at Walkabout, they have the swing strength and stuff like that, right? Or the hit strength. Why do you
love
think
that.
that's there?
No, and
Why?
that's good. And that's an example of things. That's a perfect example
Yeah.
of what I think developers should be looking at. That's a perfect example. And a lot of developers aren't thinking like that. And for a developer that's not even like a VR developer, like that's basically new to gaming, that's incredible for them to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Knowing you, that might be because of you. That might be something you put in their ear.
Well, that really doesn't matter to me, though. It's like I'm there to help. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to be particularly recognized for everything that I've helped do during the time with that. It's just more people are able to play. And that's what really matters to me in the long run, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love VR, but yeah, I also want to enjoy as much as I can of it, so I'm going to fight for that. I mean, yeah, I've even tested games like Fit XR for seated because I used to be a kickboxer. So I knew how to swing and do all that. Can you do uppercuts while you're sitting in there and go back and forth? Yeah, if you have some mobility sitting in the chair, as long as you can lean back and forth, it's doing it. There's been little minor adjustments made to things that most people wouldn't even realize that are there. But that was to allow more people to play.
Well, I mean,
we just
VR in its basic state can be very good for low impact physical activity.
Yeah, but that also wasn't breaking from their vision of their game to making minor tweaks here and there, right? That just allowed a few more people to play. I don't expect everything to be for everybody. Yeah, there are going to be things that I'm not going to be able to do and that I won't do, and same for others out there too as well. Same for probably any regular gamer, right? There's games that you don't want to play either and stuff. Yeah, but yeah, like I said, as long as they're at least thinking about it a little bit, somewhat, awesome. If you're going to help us out, great.
And
you both sell that many more games than I could promote your games to that many more people
and listening,
try to help you get more sales.
Listening to the community too, right? Because games are VR. We live in it's the Wild West, and they're always being patched, usually with major changes. And so I think it's also just listening to the community, right? And if the community's saying like, "Hey, this and this and that," but the problem is, and I said this often, the people that are having accessibility problems, they're either not even playing VR because it's not for them, or they're quiet about it.
Well, there's also there's a lot of the times where we do put in changes to be made, but there are things that are more prevalent for more of the audience of what they're catering to do, and that's fine. Take care of the bugs and other patches and stuff you need to do first. Give us an option eventually when you can.
No, that's the takeaway. I think
don't forget about it because I'm going to come to remind you. I will.
That's the takeaway. I think it's just keeping that stuff in mind. There's two takeaways this episode. The first one is just developers keeping this stuff in mind. As you're developing or before development, just to have it there and seeing what you can do with this in regards to your game. Not to say that it has to be for everybody, but just keeping the stuff in mind. And the second takeaway is add a seated option in Pavlov. That's it. This is our episode, right? No.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I have a magnet thing to get my gun back off the floor, right? Like,
yep.
How does that affect you, right? The able-bodied gamer on the other side. And I hate to refer to it as that, but it's what the terminology is.
Not to go back too much. I think the biggest. I mean, there's the Do the developers have the time and the money to do it? There's like, does the game just even lend itself to certain decisions? I think ultimately the biggest hindrance to accessibility in gaming is anything that is competitive. I think as soon as as soon as there's a competitive nature to it, I think that developers have to be very careful. That's all, because it becomes a balancing issue. And I'm just saying it adds, as soon as it's competitive, there is just a much greater hurdle. For example, let's use Pavlov again as an example. It's like some people may not may have shaky hands. They may just exactly. And it's like, and it's crazy that no VR games really, when you think about it, have auto aim as an option, or an auto aim strength adjuster like every flat game just about that has shooters. But that doesn't really make sense in Pavlov, really, because it's a competitive thing, and auto aim, like, I mean, that kind of throws it out the window. But playing Resident Evil,
that's where eye tracking can help, right? Eye tracking can lend itself to something like that. It's
possibly,
maybe that where you're looking is where you're targeting.
Maybe I just think in a competitive shooter, that's a tough one, because it's almost like having those auto aim cheats on. I get
game
that.
by game basis, boys. Game by game basis.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The competitive nature makes that more difficult. But playing Resident Evil 8 Village, I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't add some type of an auto aim assist or a hand steady feature.
Yeah.
Those
a lot of things compensate for it. I mean, I have shaky hands, but you run through me after the fall, I'll pop more heads than you throughout. I guarantee you. Like,
you often kick my ass.
There are, like I said, limitations don't always mean it's going to be a lesser player in that aspect. And I know a lot of people misunderstand that outside. You guys do not, because we've had these conversations. But like, it doesn't mean it's a lesser player. Like, there's a reason there's a nader in my and I live up to it. Just like that argument with these guys before is, you might talk shit in these guys and you think they can't play, but I mean, I know blind guys that'll kick the shit out of you in Mortal Kombat and other shit like that. I mean, you'd be surprised. One sense goes, the others get stronger, right? For a lot of them there. Some may not apply to everybody.
All you do is go on YouTube and you'll see some guys out there that are like playing first-person shooters with their feet and destroying people.
Well, I was ripping people in Firewall with a DualShock when you guys all had aims.
I remember that. Yeah.
So don't discount people like me out there, because we love gaming just as much as you do. But I'm not saying you in particular. I know it sounds like I'm saying it to you, but like I'm just saying for others and developers out there, don't and other players, don't discount us.
I think
we'll surprise you.
An excellent part to end this episode. Don't discount them. Yes. Include them.
Yes.
Well, yes. I mean, that's the whole idea.
If you can.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, game by game basis, it just doesn't make sense all the time. But where it does, I think taking that extra step would be really great for people, especially, like I said, people just even getting older too. Keep in mind, these developers have to keep in mind that the market that embraced VR the first were their 30-somethings, and we're gonna keep growing with them. But god damn it, let us sit down.
There's a lot of 60 and 70-year-olds that are playing that.
I know.
Even 80-year-olds.
Let
us
sit down.
Well, when I'm 70 or 80, I want to be plugged in, man.
I'm not going to give away who it was, but I had an.
I know. Yep. I know you're talking about. Anyways, guys, we'll wrap it up there. Just quickly in chat there, people were talking about a mat. I use a mat in VR, actually. It's like a circular standing mat. It came with my Cyber Shoes chair, which I love. I still use the Guardian, but I spread the Guardian out really wide because I never want to see it.
Yep.
But I do like the little mat. It I at least gives me an idea if I'm like lost the center of my room. That's kind of how I rock and roll with it. So maybe that answers your guys' question there. I mean, I'm still sitting a lot of times if I can, but guys, please hit that like button. Thanks for those of you who sat around and enjoyed the show. It's it's not necessarily the most accessible show that we were doing, because we're not just talking about new games. We're talking about like more serious things that affect the industry. But I think it's important, and I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Jason, thanks for joining us, man. We couldn't have had this show without you, or we shouldn't have had this show without you. because we're just too clueless.
Well,
without
I'm not the only one, but I
No,
appreciate you bringing.
but having that perspective is invaluable, super invaluable, and I hope that some developers watch this episode and maybe just take a moment and think about what they're doing with their games.
And those of you that have already done it and worked with me on stuff, and others, nah.
Yeah,
I know I could see you smiling, and we appreciate you doing that. We really do. We really thank you for that.
I mean, obviously you'll see Jason's Twitter tag here. So if you want to get in contact with him to further pick his brain or have him consult on any of your stuff, definitely hit him up. He's done it before. I think you're pretty open to that.
Yeah, of course.
He might contact you if you don't contact him.
Yeah, and others that are like me, whatever your ailment is, let's cover them. Let's have options for anybody that may have your same kind of ailments. If you're up to talking about it, you're up to doing it, we need more representation. So please start streaming.
There it is. I want to thank everyone who joined this little hardcore episode of ours. All you hardcore fans that have stuck with us, thank you so much. Special shout out to Salvador as well for the super chat. Salvador, we obviously appreciate you every single episode. You are keeping this whole channel alive at this point. And yeah, everybody else who just tuned in, ducked out, whatever. Thank you so much, and are listening later. We love you too.
One more shout out to the Patreons. We love you guys. Thanks for.
Didn't I say that? I didn't say that. Oh shit!
He did not say that.
I thought he did.
Thanks, Salvador.
I thought he did too.
I thought he said Patreon.
I might not have. I'm pretty slow.
I don't really listen to Ryan that much. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in again, and we'll see you next Thursday as usual. Same.